As retired and active police officers, we all know that you can buy gear from a lot of different places, especially online. But I want to remind you of the importance of supporting companies that support law enforcement. I don't know of any company that fits that bill more than Goals. At Goals.com, their motto is proud to serve those who serve, which they do every single day. And they walk the talk by supporting dozens of focused organizations like Gold Shields. So when you're looking for gear, support our premier sponsor and go to goals.com. And for our loyal listeners to this show, use the code GOLD15 for 15% off your next purchase until October 31st. Go to goals.com today.
Welcome to Gold Shields. Join NYPD veterans Tom Smith and Dan Murphy. With over 50 years of combined experience chasing drug lords, dismantling cartels, and hunting terrorists. Now they pull back the curtain, sharing raw, unfiltered stories from the front lines and the heroes who stood beside them. No topics off limits. This is real. This is true crime. This is Gold Shields.
Hey, welcome back to Gold Shields. This is Dan Murphy along with my partner in crime, Tom Smith. How are you today, buddy?
I'm doing great. Awesome day. Looking forward to this episode and this interview for sure. Been teeing it up for a little while, and today's the day.
Yeah, yeah. We before we get into it too much, though, we usually like to, at the very beginning, say a thank you to our premier sponsor, Goals, and tacticalgear.com, goals.com. Great companies who have a great heart for the men and women of law enforcement, in addition to doing a tremendous job, don't they, Tom?
Yeah, they're in our corner, they're in law enforcement's corner, first responders' corners, and they did something special for us to give to our followers and listeners 15% offer. Just use the promo code GOLD15 on goals.com and on tacticalgear.com and get 15% off all your orders and all your merchandise. So make sure you do that. And real quick, a little self thing we do every once in a while, not often, but when we have a chance, we have to just continue to follow us on youtube.com/@goldshields and our website, thegoldshieldshow.com. And our big announcement that we got to make this fall was our merchandise, which we had people asking and asking and asking, and we finally got it done with an incredible person, Jan Boone at justaskjan.com, JUSASKJAN.com. All the merchandise is there. Go on there, order it, support us, support Jan, and thank you for that, right, Dan?
Yep, absolutely. So I'll give a little preface to today's guest who's waiting patiently in the green room, as it were. And we had to make sure we had the right M&Ms and everything for him in there because he's pretty much high maintenance. Um, he's the exact opposite of that. But 1974, New York City set the stage. A lot of stuff going on, a lot of moving parts, a lot of crazy politics, a lot of crazy violence, a lot of stuff going on. And Joe Conner is going to tell a story today that deeply affected him and his family. Tom, intro Mr. Conner, if you may.
Yeah, a lot of people think 9/11 was the first big thing in New York, when it came to terrorism. And then some people remembered the first Trade Center bombing, and that was the beginning. And that's not even close to the truth. Uh, a reign of terror took over New York City from 74 to 83, involving one particular group, the FALN, which we're going to get into. And they were responsible for a horrific bombing at the Fraunces Tavern down on Pearl Street in Manhattan on June 24th, 1975, which took the life of Joe's dad, Frank. And Joe is here today to talk about that event, subsequent things that went on involving this case, and where we're at with it today, on top of his push to bring more attention to acts of terror like this. So, Joe, it is an absolute honor and a pleasure to have you on Gold Shields today, my friend. Welcome.
Thank you, Tom, and thank you, Dan. I really appreciate you having me, giving voice to my dad.
Well, it's our pleasure. This show is in honor of him and those lost that day and in other days in similar instances. Absolutely. Innocent victims. Tell us about your dad.
Sure. My dad's name was Frank Conner. On January 24th, 1975, he was 33 years old. He was a young guy. He was a son of New York. He was born in Washington Heights, to immigrant parents. His mom came from Ireland, his father came from England, and was really made something of himself. Like he was a not a great student. He went to the Incarnation Grade School and Bishop Dubois High School, and he got a job at J.P. Morgan, called the Morgan Guaranty Trust Company, at a high school where his mom, my grandmother, she worked in the facilities, and she got him a job there so he'd be safe, so he wouldn't be a cop or a fireman or work in the subways like so many of his friends. So he started there at a high school and eventually met my mom. She was from Ireland and met her at a dance. And they dated. Years later, they got married and moved to New Jersey. I was born on January 20th, 1966. My brother was January 13th, 1964. So on January 24th, 1975, I had just turned 9. My brother had just turned 11. And we're going to be celebrating our birthdays that night. It was a Friday, and my dad was going to try to get home from work a little early. And my mom, for an Irish woman, she cooked a good lasagna, so she had made a lasagna that day. Believe it or not, she put a lot of meat in it. That's what the Irish do. There's probably butter in it too.
Oh yeah. I'm flashback to my upbringing. Sorry.
But my dad went to work that morning like he did every day, and he worked downtown for Morgan Bank. Around lunchtime, my mom had heard on the radio there was an explosion downtown, and so she called. He didn't pick up, and she got one of his coworkers, and they said they didn't know where my dad was, and she said he was there, wasn't he? She had the real premonition that something had gone wrong. She'd been feeling like that, she says, for, around since before Christmas that year. And, well, sure enough, he was having lunch with clients when, they moved tables at Fraunces Tavern, and, Fraunces it's still there. It's the oldest, building in New York. It's where George Washington bade farewell to his officers after the Revolutionary War. It's where the Sons of Liberty met, and it's where he was having lunch when a scruffy kinda guy walked in with a duffel bag and set it down on the steps behind, the table. Dad and, guys he was having lunch with had just moved. It was about 1:15 in the afternoon, and, the guy dropped the bomb, dropped the bag, and moved pretty quickly, according to the survivors. Within a few minutes, it detonated, and, that was the 1975. The Vietnam War had just ended, so a lot of, first responders were war veterans, and they say they hadn't seen such carnage even in Vietnam. It was an extremely, um, high potent, uh, potency bomb, about 25 sticks of dynamite, they estimate, with shrapnel included. It was clearly meant to, kill a lot of people, and it was set on the stair about, even with the bodies of everyone who would be sitting around. Fortunately, right before it detonated, a waiter did apparently kicked it, sort of moved it, and cushion of the bomb went more against the wall. So instead of maybe 20 people dying, four were killed, and my dad unfortunately was one of them. We came home from school that day, and my mom was quiet because he wasn't sure what had happened, and we kind of knew in her head, but there was no confirmation of it. My brother and I went out to play like we always did. Come back, my mom came and got us at the park and said, "Guys, come back," sort of to explain what happened. Very quickly, it seemed a lot of people started showing up at our house, people he worked with, and my uncle Don, he was my dad's first cousin. His son Steve was my father's godson, and Steve would die in the World Trade Center uh, a generation later. But we can get into that story too. But um, we found out, then I thought maybe I was 9 years old. I thought maybe my dad was under rubble, fire rescue, but no, he died. He died instantly, and at 33 years old, it was devastating to our family. Um, to my poor grandmother, he was her only child. And, I remember that night asking my mom, is grandma still our grandmother? My mom kind of set the stage for the rest of our lives. We're saying, of course she is. We're not going to fall apart. And my mom's 87 and still that tough now. Um, so that was over 50 years ago, and we did a commemoration of it like we do every year, but it was a little bit bigger this year for the 50-year anniversary of Fraunces. We have a lot of great people, law enforcement, whatnot, um, at the and survivors there. But as a family, my brother and I grew up. We went to college and got married and have families of our own, and never, obviously we never forget. And that's what we say on 9/11 now, never forget. And that's part of it. We learn never forget, but always do something. And we were forced to do something in August 1999, when after these terrorists were all arrested and put away essentially for life in Chicago, they were granted clemency by the Clintons. And it was when Hillary was running for senator from New York. She was going to be going against Giuliani at the time. If you remember, well, that was before Giuliani came down with cancer. So they were trying to connect Hillary, who was a carpetbagger, to the Latino community in New York, by having her support these terrorists. Now, keep in mind that the FALN were never charged with the Fraunces bombing. They were, however, charged with 30 bombings in Chicago, with responsibility for the Fraunces bombing. They left communiques. So they were essentially put away for life in Chicago in the early 1980s. There was no reason to bring them back to New York to face another trial because there was no death penalty in either state. So essentially, they were going away for life, for 55 to 70 years for most of them. At sentencing, they threatened to kill Judge McMillan in Chicago, who carried 2 6-shooters under his robe. They claimed to be freedom fighters like George Washington, and McMillan said to Carlos Torres, one of their leaders, "Well, if you're George Washington and the British had found him, they would have hanged him. If I could, that's what I would do to you." So they were really bad people. They were Cuban trained. They were Cuban financed. Out of their 130 bombs, as you referenced before, between 1974 and 1983, they left a couple of fingerprints. That's it. They were trained in the spy craft. They didn't use their fingers, their thumbs. They used their hands to carry things. They were very, very well disciplined. They were experts at disguises. In the spy craft and not being followed, they were very they were really dedicated to their cause. So much to the point that one of them, a guy named William Morales, um, was torquing a pipe bomb in his Queens bomb factory on July 12th, 1978, which would have been my dad's 37th birthday, when when powder got caught in the threads and detonated. It blew off 9 of his fingers, 1 of his eyes. And although he was essentially dying, he was grabbing papers, flushing them down the toilet, and turned the gas on in his apartment to turn it into a bomb. So when the first responders got there, he could kill them. That's the dedication we're talking about. They were Marxists. They were communists. They believed that Puerto Rico would be second wing of the same bird as the to Cuba. That's kind of the expression that they use. Uh, they claim to want to liberate Puerto Rico from American uh, imperialism, yet their real goal was to subjugate the Puerto Rican people into another Marxist state. Now, Morales, just we'll finish off a little story about him. He, with one finger and one eye, he somehow escaped from Bellevue Prison Hospital while being fitted for a prosthetic device, and escaped down a sheet, and was picked up by the family. They were members of the May 19th Communist Organization, the Black Liberation Army, the Weather Underground. and they're sort of back to hell, and escaped to Mexico, where he and some accomplices were in a shootout with Mexican police. One of the Mexican federales was killed. Morales was put in prison in Mexico, but in the 1988 was extradited to Cuba, where he's been a guest of the Castro regime, and the new regime since then, with Joe and Chesimard and others. And we know that Joe and Chesimard just died recently, but there's others there, like Victor Garena, who was another FAL. So these were really bad guys, and they were released for politics by Clinton. You know, we can get into more detail, but I think that's probably a good place to take a breath.
Looking for powerful defense without the mess? Meet Impact, a revolutionary line of chemical irritants designed for law enforcement, military, and personal protection. With no blowback, no cross-contamination, and easy cleanup, Carry Impact delivers unmatched stopping power without the hassle. Whether you're in the field or on the street, safety should never be compromised. Protect yourself with the next generation of defense. Carry Impact, stopping power redefined. Have you ever wished you could go back in time and see the events that shape the true crime cases that fascinate you? With newspapers.com, it's like having a time machine to the past. Dive into more than 1 billion newspaper pages from 1690 to 2025 and relive the headlines that shocked entire towns. Explore newspapers from the US, UK, Canada, Australia, and beyond with a simple search. Read the breaking news as it happened, crime scene reports, witness testimonies, and courtroom drama. Explore forgotten clues and see how the media shaped the narrative of infamous cases. But it's not just the major stories. Newspapers.com lets you dig into local mysteries, missing persons reports, and the small-town scandals that history forgot. It's the closest you can get to being there when it all unfolded. So, if you're ready to dig deeper into the crimes that keep you up at night, start your journey today at newspapers.com. Use the code GOLDSHIELDS for an exclusive 20% discount on your subscription.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I mean, what an account of all that. But the one question I got right now, Joe, is you when this happened, you were 9 years old, and to have an understanding of what happened would be very, very difficult. So, when do you start to really understand what happened, FALN in their role, and like throughout your life, when does it really like hit you? Like, all right, I need to address this, and this is a problem, and getting all the information about actually what happened that day.
Yeah, it's a great question. Well, in 1970, well, just one other thing was in 1978, they blew up a bomb at the Mobile Oil Building in New York, the same day that they threatened to blow up the World Trade Center, and the World Trade Center was evacuated that day for the first time. So there's weird connections there. And I ended up working in that Mobile Oil Building years later, just randomly. It wasn't called Mobile Oil. Anyway, it's a great question. So when Morales blew himself up in Queens, that became a big story. Now, you have to, like, remember the time, right? So there was no internet. There was and it was a left-wing terror group. The press wasn't reporting on it even then to the extent that they should have, and so we got very limited information, and they were never convicted of the Fraunces bombing, so law enforcement didn't necessarily feel they had to go and tell us anything. So, we knew that Morales had blown himself up. We knew that he had escaped. We knew that he was in Mexico and then Cuba. We knew that the FALN had been picked up in the early 80s in Chicago and put away for life. So that was kind of what was going on, right? It was kind of not much. But what changed it for me was I graduated college in 1988, and I got a job at the Morgan Bank, the same bank my dad worked, right? I was lucky I got a job anywhere. But but
Oh,
seriously, man. So so while I was there, I was like, well, I'd like to see his personnel file. And so I think my mom, back I was like 22, but my mom had to sign off on disclaimer, or whatever it was. And they gave me the file. They gave me a copy of the file. So I started reading about my father. So I was only 9. I didn't, I knew what Uncle Don would talk about, his friends would talk about. He had a lot of friends, but I wanted to know about him. And so I read his file and I realized, like, he was a New York City kid and he was working with all these like Harvard grads and stuff. And he felt like he was getting shafted. He deserved better than. And that really kind of stuck with me. I'm like, well, I'm gonna try to make I'm gonna try to help where I can. So I started writing letters in the like around 1990, 91, 92. I started writing letters to Warren Christopher, to Giuliani, to Bill Clinton, about getting Morales back. That's what I focused on. The other guys were all in prison in Chicago. There was nothing I could do about that and nothing I needed to do about that. But Morales was the outstanding guy. So I got letters back from the Justice Department saying, hey, Morales is a terrorist, we know, but we have no extradition treaties with Cuba. We'd love to help your son, but you're too young to vote, that type thing. And so I was like, but I didn't give up. I kept going at it. And I learned a lot. I learned a lot about what had happened. And, even in college, uh, I went to Villanova and down at, I would go on the microfiche. See, one of the guys who was at the table with him, but two of the guys worked for Scott Paper and they were from like Bryn Mawr. So there was a lot of articles in the Philadelphia Inquirer about this at the time. So to take a step back, I started learning more while I would go. The few times I'd make it to the library, I'd spend my time like looking up the microfiche of this stuff and just trying to understand what had happened. And that taught me a lot. So when I started doing that stuff in the early 90s, I kind of had a background on what was going on. So I also called NYPD. He had a nice Omega watch, and I always wondered what had happened to that. And so I got some connections with the JTTF and the NYPD. A guy named Rick Hahn, he was a FBI agent, who investigated. He was a Chicago guy, remains a good friend of mine. Jeremy Margolis, who was a U.S. assistant U.S. attorney in Chicago. I got to know some of the people who were involved at the time, and then the Clemencies happened, and that was August 1999. And by the time that happened, I knew it. I knew a lot, and I knew a lot of people, and um, I was kind of prepared. And because we had heard in 1998, kind of ironic, there was a guy named Tony Fremantle. He was a reporter for the um, Houston Chronicle, and he contacted our family and said there were rumors that the Clintons were going to give clemency to the FALN. And my brother and I met with him at Moran's right by over, the World Trade Center was right over us. If you know what that is, it was the World Trade Center. I think there's like PJ O'Rourke's there now or something. But we met there and talked about this, and I think we wrote a letter to the local paper at the time because it started coming up, and then it disappeared like so many things. Like they throw this stuff out, they want to see if what kind of reaction they get. Then it gets quiet, and then in like August 15th or whatever it was, 1999, all of a sudden they gave clemency. They gave clemency, and without any warning or anything. So then it was time to act. And, we did some of the talk shows at the time. It was on Laura Ingram's show and, what's his name on, the gray-haired guy on MSNBC. He's still around. Anyway, ugh, I'll think about it in a second. Anyway, so we did some of
Oh,
those shows. What was it?
Chris Matthews?
Chris Matthews. And he was great. And Laura Ingraham was on. She had a show called Watch It. It was like an MSNBC show. Henry Kissinger was waiting to go on right after my brother and me, so we got to talk to Henry Kissinger about it. So he's like, "So what are you guys doing?" Yeah. Like the Clintons gave clemency to the terrorist who killed our father. He goes, "No, I have still nothing he would do would surprise me." Like, all right, we got Henry on our side. I guess that's good. But the terrorists didn't accept the clemency, and most people don't remember this, but for 30 days, they didn't accept clemency. So Eric Holder was the deputy attorney general at the time, and he was tasked by Clinton with giving Clinton cover for the clemencies because he knew that there would be backlash, right? So he had gone to Holder before the clemencies were granted, and said, "Hey, I know that the clemency is it's an unchecked power of the president, right?" And it's kind of ironic now, I was thinking about it, because they're talking about this all kings thing. Meanwhile, Clinton was an all king using the clemency, which comes directly from the crown. It comes from English law, and only a king could offer clemency. Meanwhile, Clinton and Hillary did it to release terrorists to help her political future. So anyway, so Eric Holder gets tasked with putting the clemency together by Clinton. So he goes to the pardon attorney. Her name was Margaret Love, and he's looking for a memo that says, "Yeah, I think they should be given clemency." And she says, "No, nope, not doing it. They don't deserve clemency." Meanwhile, they hadn't requested it, and as we found out, for 30 days they debated whether it was going to accept it or not. So Love says no. Holder fires her, and he hires a guy named Adams. Remember this. Anyway, and he won't give Clinton the okay either. So he does write an options memo, which kind of outlined 3 options Clinton would have. One would be the clemency, one would be pardons, which was never really going to happen. There is a slight difference between a pardon and clemency, and one to do nothing. So Clinton ended up giving them the clemency. He does it while Congress is on recess in August 1999. What they didn't realize is that these terrorists weren't accepting it because they didn't recognize the United States jurisdiction over them, and they said they were in a war, and basically "F you" to the president. So then tide starts turning on Hillary and them, because now the country's like, "Well, what the hell's going on here? You're giving clemency to people that don't want it? Like, don't you have to have some don't you have to have some sort of remorse to get clemency?" Nope. So on September 10th, 1999, they accepted clemency, all but Oscar Lopez Rivera stayed in, and they walked out of prison on September 11th, 1999. Yeah. And so Lopez stays in. He didn't really give a reason why he didn't accept clemency, but he didn't. And so years later, I went to his federal parole hearing in Terre Haute and kept him in. And there he acknowledged that he didn't accept the clemency in 99. Carlos Torres, one of the other leaders, wasn't offered clemency, and Oscar was going down with the ship. And I found a picture of Oscar Lopez outside of Fraunces that was published in the Daily News the day of the bombing that somehow was missed. And I talked to my FBI friends, prosecutors. They all know it's him. But he was, and just to finish the story on Lopez, he stayed in prison. We went to Terre Haute to his parole hearing, kept him in. And then in Obama's last day in office, he gave him a second clemency for the same. So he turned down clemency by Clinton, and then Obama handed it to him on my birthday in 2017.
So for everyone listening to this, let's just recap a couple of things that I think are noteworthy. Disgusting, but noteworthy. Hillary and Bill Clinton granted clemency to avowed terrorist enemies of our nation and of freedom, who did many bombings, not just Fraunces Tavern.
130.
130 bombings, killed many people. Now, let's understand something. The FALN has roots that go back farther than these guys in the 70s. In the 50s, this is a group that tried to kill President Truman, and almost did, if not for the unbelievably heroic actions of one wounded Secret Service officer. I mean, this is a group that is disgusting and deserves to be in the Supermax in Florence, Colorado. These are not the people you consider for clemency.
Sorry for interrupting. And
That's
Lopez was in the Supermax in Florence, and they sprung him. He was in Terre Haute when they let him out. Yeah, these guys were convicted. I just have a little notes here: seditious conspiracy, weapons possession, armed takeover of the 1980 Democrat-Republican presidential campaign headquarters, planning to kidnap Reagan's son, Ron, um, threatened to kill the judge at sentencing. Lopez Lopez tried to escape from prison twice. Once once with a helicopter that they were gonna land at Leavenworth when he was there. He did the prison tour, you see. And, they were and they were trying to get dynamite to blow up the wall at Leavenworth. A guy named Claude Marks, he was a Weather Underground, member. He was the one who went and got the dynamite to do it. The FBI had a sting going on. So that the connections between the Weather Underground, the FALN, the main communist organizations, the Black Liberation Army, um, all right there. And you're talking about a guy named Bill Ayers, uh, who we know was connected with Obama and Bernardine Dorn. Jose Lopez, Oscar Lopez brothers, community organizer in Chicago, worked very closely with Bill Ayers. Um, people think you're wearing a tinfoil hat when you tell them the story, except that it's all true. And the connections are deep and they go back mainly to Chicago. I can go on and on and on, but I didn't mean to interrupt. Sorry about that.
No, by all means. The history you're laying out is the kind of history that Americans need to be reminded of, and many haven't heard it yet. Like you said, you're not going to turn on MSNBC tonight and see a special on the Fraunces Tavern bombing 50 years later. It's not going to happen. The mainstream media doesn't want you to know about the connections between some of the leading political leaders of the leftist group of the Democratic Party and terrorism. They don't want you to hear about this. But the fact of the matter is, it's abhorrent, it's disgusting, and it should be known by everybody. Let the truth shine. And I mean, these people that did this stuff, you lost your dad at age 9 because some guy wanted to make a political statement at the place where Washington said farewell to his troops after winning the Revolutionary War. I mean, the symbolism, it's a symbolic hit.
It was a symbolic hit. And I think, I've said this before, forgiveness is something that we address we have a movie called Shattered Lives, and people want to take a look at it. It's on shatteredlives.us. That's the website where you can get it. Um, but in any event, I'm a Catholic, right? My son's starting to be a priest. Uh, we have there's something called forgiveness, right? And we struggled with that. And I found that I was listening to Charlie Kirk, who I actually got to know over the years, and just an incredible young guy. But his wife being able to forgive, and I've struggled with that. Our whole family has struggled with that, and I think that we would be more apt to forgive the terrorists on some level than the politicians that used the terrorist actions, my father's life and his death, for their own political gain. When we went to Terre Haute and faced Lopez in the prison, I think most of us were like, if he comes out and apologizes, if he takes ownership of it, if he's looking for, if he's conciliatory, looking for, we might recommend to the parole board that they let him go, but he didn't, and he lied, and so I have not forgiven the terrorists, and I've talked to priests about it, and the truth is that only God can forgive, and I can uh, if he unless people request, ask for forgiveness directly, or under no moral obligation to forgive. So it's something that struggles, and it's something that will be on our lives the rest of our lives. So when I was 9 years old, we'll all be tormented by this, and my brother 11, and my mom, she's 87, and the rest of the family. It's, you know, and the same thing is going for the 9/11 families. I can talk to that too. Back, like, story.
Yeah, I mean, we're certainly going to get into that because you have a whole nother part of a disaster impacting your family. But Dan and both of you just laid out something that I think is really important of the interconnections of these groups. It's not one group. It's not one guy. It's not three guys. It is a organized, just body of terror of who can do what, who's where, the resources that one has leaning on another, and that's what this is all about. And you think about how infuriating everything is, and I don't even know, Dan, you're talking and saying what you said from your heart, and I'm sitting here going, I don't know what to say because I'm so mad. I mean, you run out of adjectives and, things to say when you hear about our leaders, not some other country, not some third world communist, dictator. We're talking about our presidents doing this.
Yeah, and it hasn't stopped. You see, I mean, I could talk about these terrorists who've got into academia, right? So you had Bill Ayers at Illinois, you had Kathy Bodine at Columbia University. Now, is there any coincidence that Columbia University has had riots, terror supporting riots with the connection between the Islamic terrorists and these Marxist terrorists? Kathy Bodine is a poster child for that. She's dead now, but she was hired there. You had Bernadine Dorn at Northwestern. You had Ron Fiegelman, the bomb designer. The FALN's bomb was exactly the same as the Weather Underground's. Ron Fiegelman, the Weather Underground uh, bomb designer, taught William Morales and others. He was in He was a New York City public school teacher. Susan Rosenberg from the Brinks robbery. She's at John Jay College, and now um, she raises money for BLM, Black Lives Matter, with a group called Thousand Currents. Um, and one of the most crazy things is I talked about William Morales, is Guillermo Morales in Spanish, and Joanne Chesimard, who went by Asada Shakur. In in 2013, thereabouts, I I realized that, or I had heard that they had a City College in New York had a student center called the Guillermo Morales Asanta Shakur Student Center. So I went up there with my phone and I took pictures by myself, walked around the campus, found the place, walked around the campus, took pictures, couldn't get in, the door was locked, but there was posters on the outside with their images and names and whatnot. And then I called the school and I said, I'm going to go to the papers with this. You better shut that place down. And they said, well, it's a freedom of speech issue. I said, fine, you can call it what you want, but I'm still going to go to the papers. And I did. I went to the New York Post and I went to Fox. The New York Post published a lot of stories on it. Finally, they shut the place down. But the most ironic thing is my father went to CCNY when he
Wow.
graduated high school. So they had a student center at this supposed place of higher education named for the terrorists that murdered him, one of
Unbelievable.
their own students. Now he graduated from Fairleigh Dickinson, but this is the kind of
You could say it.
this kind of shit we've been going through forever. And then another thing is, and I'm sorry I'm a vent. Maybe I'm not sorry. That's why
No,
that's why I'm on the show.
that's
But
right.
but then you saw what happened to January 6th, right? So they're accusing these rioters, whatever you want to call them, a seditious conspiracy, and they need to be put in jail, and they're trying to overtake the United States, blah, blah. Well, you know what the FALN was convicted of? Seditious conspiracy. And you know what? The Democrats had these fucking people in prison and let them out for politics. So they had real, seditious conspirators in prison that they released for politics, and then they want to throw uh, these Americans who didn't plant any bombs, didn't kill anybody or anything like that, and they want to put them in jail for the rest of their lives. That's really what was boiled down to. So, like as a family, how your head, like, God, it's a bad thing to say in the context, but your head wants to explode when you see shit like this.
No, and I can absolutely understand as much as I can understand about that anger. I felt a lot of that anger on 9/11.
Yep.
When friends of mine were dead underneath my feet, and I was there burying, I was there digging to try to find them.
You were there, yeah.
And it's infuriating, and Tom felt the same. All of us felt the same thing. But you, more specifically, you lost your father to these people,
And he
so you have
deserves
every right to
he
be not
deserves
just angry,
he
but
deserves so
one
much better. Sorry.
no, but want to make changes. We can't accept this as a country anymore. We can't accept leaders that do this crap.
That's right. That's right. And if it could happen to my family, it would happen to anybody's family, right? I mean, look, we're just the average family, and they would just, I testified. I ended up testifying from the Congress a few times, and one was at Eric Holder's Senate confirmation hearing about what kind of bastard he is, and you felt it, like you're sitting there and you got the senators up on this row, like above you, literally looking down, right? So they're like the gods on Mount Olympus, and we're like a wave there. And it's on my website, wewinamerica.com, the testimonies and videos on the website. But like they literally look down on you. That's what they do. Like we're not to be respected by so many of these people are supposed to be working for us. And when you look at someone like Sheldon Whitehouse or um, some of the other guys, are just disgusting. Patrick Leahy, uh, anyway, I could go on.
I don't know how you held it together in front of the Senate. I would
I
have
did
lost
the best I could, man. Like, and then it was what's his name from Alabama? He was Trump's attorney general first, Senator. What's his name? I'm really bad at names as I get older. But, he invited me to testify at Holder's Senate confirmation hearing, and then out of the Republicans, out of 40 Republicans, like half of them voted for Holder. It's just it's unbelievable. How feckless both sides. I mean, the Democrats, I think, were worse, but the Republicans had no backbone. I think they've gotten better. I think Trump has shown them um, that you got to stand up. And
but not where it needs to be.
no, not at all, not at all. There's still a lot of that. You have a small percentage that are pretty good, but most of them are still weak.
When it comes to the safety of law enforcement, first responders, and military personnel, every moment counts, especially in the dark. Streamlight provides the reliable, high-performance lighting solutions that these heroes trust in the most dangerous situations, whether it's a car stop, navigating dark alleyways, or exploring abandoned buildings. With Streamlight by their side, our heroes can tackle challenges with confidence, knowing they have the power of advanced lighting technology to guide them. From the first responders on the front lines to the law enforcement officers ensuring our safety, Streamlight is there to make every mission a little easier and much safer. Join us in supporting those who protect us. Visit streamlight.com to discover how you can be part of the team keeping our heroes safe. Because when they shine, we all shine.
Patriot is a premium whiskey hard seltzer. We've carefully crafted 4 flavors that not only taste exceptional, but can be enjoyed on any occasion, anytime. We're committed to giving back 5% of all profits to the core groups we call the backbone of America. We are proud to help those who serve our great country. This is America's Seltzer, the brand that stands for quality, community, and the American spirit.
So, believe it or not, and unexplainably, you now have a connection to 9/11 as well with your family. Uh, again, reliving somewhat what went on in 1975. So just tell us that story, Joe.
Well, like I mentioned before, the FALN walked out of jail on September 10th, 1999, right? So I wanted to start writing about it, right? I wanted to write a book about all this stuff about my dad. So exactly 2 years later, it was September 10th, 2001, I was like, all right, it's 2 years. I got to start writing this damn thing. So I get on the train on the way home from work. I work downtown in the city. And my cousin Steve was a bond trader for Cantor Fitzgerald. He was like 5 years older than me. He was a great guy. Guys I love. But he always had beers. And on the train, I was like, oh, God, if I see him, I took an early train because I had a doctor's appointment. I was like, if I see Steve, he's going to make me drink. I have a doctor's appointment. I want to start writing like, I just can't do it. Like, so I purposely sat in a car where I wouldn't see him. Right. So like if I run into him, show up to the doctor with 5 beers in me. Probably not the best. Probably not the best thing to do. Well, So I purposely avoided Steve, and I started writing. I took out my laptop and started writing. I didn't know what the hell I was writing, but I started writing about what had happened 2 years before. A couple of paragraphs, crap. Um, but the next day, I commuted into the city with my brother, and it was a beautiful day. Um, and I get off the train. I worked at 60 Wall Street. I was on the 36th floor. My brother worked at Barclays Bank. He was a little bit closer to the Trade Center. And so he went his way. We left in you go up, you take the path, you go up in the Trade Center, the long escalators that was in Wall Street. If you remember that movie, that they show Charlie Sheen going up that. Um, but then, I went sort of, east, I guess, and Tom went north. And so I'm at my desk and I'm plugging in my laptop, and a buddy of mine, no, I'm plugging in the laptop and I'm like, oh shit, I saw the side of the North Tower explode. And I yelled, oh my God, a bomb. Because I didn't see the plane. I just saw the explosion. And you could feel it. And the side of the building ripped out. And immediately papers are like fluttering. And it looked to me like a giant air conditioner sort of tumbling through the building. Um, and a friend of mine said, "No, it was a plane. That was a plane that hit him. Freaking plane." I'm like, "What kind of plane?" And he's like, "A 727." I'm like, 727. I'm kind of a geek. Like I knew that, like, no one flies 727s anymore. That couldn't have been a 720. So I'm thinking like, it must have been like everyone said, like a smaller plane. He was just wrong. But so I picked up the phone. I tried to call Steve, and we had cards at Rolodex, and I'm looking at the Rolodex, and it said One World Trade Center, 104th floor, Hannah Fitzgerald, which is one and two. I commuted through there every day for exactly. I started working on September 10th, 1988. So it was almost exactly like 13 years, and that I was downtown, and so. I didn't know, like, Steve, was that 1 or 2? I didn't know, like, you knew north or south, but that's not the way they had it in the car. So I called Steve and I didn't get him. I got his voicemail. She's like, "You all right?" "I don't know what the hell's going on over there, but you gotta get out of there." Um, and then I tried to call my brother and I didn't get him. And I think I tried to call home at that point just to tell my wife that that I wasn't in the building. She'd certainly see it on the news. My daughter, it was her first day of pre-K, and my son was a couple of years older than that. But so she was taking him to school, and they didn't get her. And then I finally got my brother at about 9 o'clock, and then we saw this South Tower explode. And then we knew clearly that we were in a war. And we started thinking, what was on those planes? Could there have been anthrax on the planes? Could there have been um, others, the chemicals on the plane? Let's go in the opposite direction of the wind, right? Um, and fortunately, the wind was blowing south. So and my brother's like, "I'll meet you at Wendy's on Water Street." And I go down to I leave. Other people stayed. I was like, "I don't know if there's more planes coming. There could be more planes coming. Like, how the hell do I know? I'm right by the stock exchange. What's the next target?" So, so I meet my brother by Wendy's on Water Street. We ran into a girl that we knew, and we kind of ran under the Brooklyn Bridge because we knew that the Blind Sheik had made that a target of that was going to be the next thing. So we went into Chinatown and ended up at a church saying a prayer. And it was I think it's called St. Patrick's Church. It was Chinatown. And when we came out, people had said the towers had collapsed. And I didn't know what that meant, but I didn't really know what that meant. I didn't know if it was like the top of a cigarette that might have fallen off. And but all you saw when you looked over there was this big plume of smoke. You couldn't tell if there was ever a building there or if there was still a building there. And so we walked up to the Angelica Theater with this woman I worked with, and people were coming in covered in soot. It was low, like we went to where the buildings were low. because we didn't know if there was more planes coming. And I think we got a call. I got my wife on the phone there and told her we were all right. And then we walked, and I'll finish the story quickly, but we walked west and up Water Street, and it struck me, and I was thinking about what when you were interviewing Tim on your show, and all the heroes going south toward the fire, and I was going the opposite way away from it, and really struck me what kind of people we have in our country, and they were willing to go in there because we didn't know if there were 60,000 dead or if people were going to go down there and burn. We just didn't know, and um, neither did they, but they were willing to go. And Tom and I got a one of those dinner. Those like theater boats that people buy you as a gift, and you go out and you listen to music, but you feel like you're being freaking held hostage for 3 hours.
Yeah.
Those cruise things that everyone thinks
Yeah, yeah.
it's a great freaking present, and you're like, holy shit, I can't wait till this thing is over. So we were on one of those, and it took us over to Jersey, and dropped us off in Weehawken, but they had they had buses lined up. They were really good, and they brought us to Giant Stadium parking lot. And then my brother's wife, her family from Rutherford, one of her cousins came and picked us up, and he had a six-pack in the car, and he's like, "You guys want a beer?" And I'm like, "Well, you gotta get arrested." He goes, "No one's arresting me today." I'm like, "Yeah, you're right." So we drove he drove us to our cars. My brother and I both lived in the same town, and then we decided we'd go to Steve's house, and he lived in Franklin Lakes. He was brought up in Saddlebrook, and I ended up driving his car home from the train station that night, the same train station my dad had parked in. My dad was his godfather, and it was funny. Well, Steve was a lot taller than me, and like I wouldn't change his radio station. I wouldn't change the seat. So I got in this car, and he had News Radio 88 on, and I kind of drove leaning back like this because he was a lot taller than me, but I wasn't changing anything because that was his. And so we drove his car back home to his house that night, and around Christmas they found part of him. Um, he was a good dude. He was like those bond trader guys. He was fearless. Like if there was a way to get out, he'd have found it, and always had a lot of energy and kind of the life of the party. Uh, Left a wife and not unlike my mom. We had two kids.
Tragedy on top of tragedy, and, so he was at the 101st floor, you said, with
Yeah,
Cancer Road, so
yeah,
he was above the impact zone, and that was
he
almost
was it was
impossible,
impossible.
virtually.
Yeah, everything was severed, beneath him. So, and then, so as a 9/11, I consider myself a 9/11 family member too. I mean, I was there, and ended up going to Guantanamo Bay with my cousin, with his sister Jean, um, in 2016, and have been, trying to fight the fight, as a 9/11 family member and as a, Fraunces Tavern, and, it's funny because I was listening to Tim, and he was saying, like, how over the years, it's been a lot of pain, but at the same time, been fortunate, and I feel like that too. You took the words right out of my mouth. I've met some amazing people, including Tim, and, now you guys, and so many of the law enforcement, who dedicated their lives to justice for everybody, not only 9/11 people, but my father and stuff, and 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 I talked to them about it too, like, these guys, so many of them spent years trying to catch the FALN and now the Al Qaeda and that, and, nights and nights and nights and stakeouts and not being with their families and drinking after they're just going to bars and their marriages breaking up and their family lives being disrupted, and then the Clintons give these fuckers clemency and claim that they were never violent, and, what does that do to someone who you guys know? What does that do to someone who spent their entire life and finally found justice and then were absolutely dismissed by, by their own government? These are amazing people, and I've been really fortunate to know them, and I'm talking about people like Rick Hahn or, Kenny Maxwell and Jeremy Margolis, Greg Greg Rodriguez, just Charlie Wells, so many of these like amazing people, and um, and I'm sorry I only named a few. There's a lot more,
No, no, no.
uh,
We get it. We
but
get it.
you know what I'm saying, right? Don Wolford, who came to Terre Haute with us, and he died since. He was, you know, well, anyway.
You rattled off some heavy hitters there.
So
Some
great,
really
with
big
right? I'm
big
fortunate,
names and big
amazing
careers,
people.
big impacts.
Yeah, John Miller,
Oh,
who
yeah.
got to know, who's been terrific on all this stuff. Just like, and just good, decent people who've been really
Well, to where's the question, the bill that
cool.
you wanna get done,
Good. I'm glad you raised
where
that.
are we at with that?
Yeah, well, like I said, yeah, I'm glad you raised that. We have a bill. It was called the Frank Connor Trooper Warner Forster Justice Act. Warner Forster was the Jersey State policeman who was killed by John Chesmart. And it went, it's in the Senate. It was brought by Marco Rubio when he was senator, and since he's been, now he's the Secretary of State. It's been picked up by Rick Scott's office and Ted Cruz. But now that Joanne Chesmard is dead, I don't know how exactly it's supposed to work, but I'm sure the bill would have to be somewhat rewritten. There is a House bill too. That's Chris Smith from New Jersey has a similar bill, and it has to be reconciled. But it's hard, guys. Like our government, it's glacial in so many ways. And I've gone to DC, I don't know how many times, testified, and just walked the halls, knocked on doors, and talked to people. And I think everyone, it started with Menendez, and then you see what happened to him. He was a co-signer of the bill, and I met with him, and now he's like big house, wherever the hell it is. Uh,
Without
but
his gold
seriously,
bars.
the Gray
Yeah.
Bar Motel.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, this is the shit, right? So you know, the bill, I have to get on it again, and I think everyone has really good intentions, but it's hard to get other people to pick up your goal, right? Everyone has their own. I mean, I ended up talking to the Charge of Affairs in Havana. Great guy, he's totally on board with getting Morales back. Um, but there's a lot of other stuff going on. Like, you know, we're signing an Israel peace treaty with Hamas. I'm not going to call Rubio and start busting his hump about Cuba when a million other things. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah, it's hard.
it's a priority thing, and I mean, we can chew gum and walk at the same time. But Jeff Sessions was the senator. And I was thinking, I'm sorry, it just popped in my head. But anyway, it's hard to get people to focus. And then I get back, and I have a job too, and family, and that, and um, but a show like yours will really help. And I was hoping the movie would help, and we're still trying to get the movie on more platforms. It's on Vimeo right now, which people can get. But
Let's go into that if you
sure,
don't mind.
sure, not
You
at
have
all.
a book and a movie. We wanna hear about that. We want our audience to hear about how to get them,
Sure.
to see them, to read it, to experience it, to learn more about this show.
Yeah, sure. Well, actually, we got two books. One of them I wrote with a buddy of mine about the founders coming to life in America in 19. We wrote it in 2013, I guess, 2012, and it's really cool. It's called The New Founders. There's a website, newfounders.net. Um, I don't know, you could probably get it still on. I don't think you can't. It's not printed anymore, but you could get it on Amazon. And it's just cool. Like, what would the founders do in America now? And we use the Constitution. We use the letters between the Federalist Papers. We use letters between the founders to put them in today's world, and deal with today's events. And so many of our problems can be solved if we just go back to the Constitution and follow that. And I think we're doing that. And that we bring Washington back alive today, and so many things are like Trump. It's freaking weird. Like, we wrote it, and you read it now, and you're like, wait a second, that sounds like Trump. But so anyway, and I wrote it with Mike Duncan, a really great guy. I went to college with. So that's the first one. Then we have the Shattered Lives, which I wrote with a guy named Jeff Inger. He had seen me on some of the Fox shows, and and contacted me. He's a really good writer, and I had started to write this, like I said, on September 10th, uh, 2001, and honestly, after 9/11, I couldn't get my head around it. All right, I wrote a lot, but it was all over the place, not focused, and Jeff kind of he brought a professionalism to it, and he gave a good balanced history of our role in Puerto Rico and on the history part of it, and so I think the book is really good. It's really educational, and then the movie is loosely based on the book, but it gets into our family and my dad and the really our fight for justice and and forgiveness and justice and family and all the things that all Americans deal with, God and uh, faith. And, my cousin Gene is in it. So we get into 9/11 and, and connect everything like that. And I think I'm really proud of it. I wish people would see it. Because I think would give you a good background as to what this average American family has gone through. Like I said, if it could happen to us, it can happen to anyone, right? And um, so I think that would be great and the money aside, I know, whatever, that'd be nice, but it's all a matter of, getting the word out and at the end of the day, possibly bringing William Morales back from Cuba, and, he was sentenced to 89 years, New York State, 10 years federal, um, and some said, "Well, he's 75 years old, he can't finish those terms." I said, "Well, you can give it a shot, right?" You know?
Like a
Um,
judge
see
famously
how
once
see
when
how
a
he
hu
does,
yeah,
you know?
somebody said, "Your Honor, I can't do no 10 years." He says, "Son, do as much as you can."
Exactly, do the best you can. Um, that's what I'm saying, and Ron Kuby's his lawyer, so we do have a lot of people in the Eastern District of New York, who've been pushing this too. They've been really good, and, so there is that, and, so and I guess the other part of it, I don't know if you guys, the old US attorney, Andy Maloney, he was my dad's first cousin, and, uh
Really? Wow,
yeah,
Eastern District, yeah,
yeah,
mhm.
and, his son Duke is, involved with 9/11 families and, has been instrumental in some of their wins over, with Saudi, and so, the family's been really involved in this stuff, a lot of it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So the platforms for the film, is it a documentary, first of all? It's
It's
not
a
a feature film.
documentary film, yep, and it's called Shattered Lives. The website is shatteredlives.us, and you can get on that, you can see, like, the trailer, and then you could, rent it or buy it if you wanted to. My website, which has most of my stuff, is called wewinamerica.com, and, that was, in the New Founders, George Washington had a website when he was running for president called wewinamerica.com, so we took that from the book and ended up and so there's a lot of the Fox shows and the times I testified in front of Congress and a lot of stuff I've written for Town Hall and New York. We did, New York Times, no, the, Wall Street Journal, a couple of articles and stuff, and, so there's a lot on that, more than you probably ever want, but, um, and then, uh, and then there's the newfounders.net where that book is on, and my, Joseph F. Connor, um, at Joseph F. Connor, I guess, is the Twitter account or X account. So there's a lot of ways to find me. And, and I'm happy to talk about it. I think I think it's kind of a case study, and uh, so many things just keep popping up, you know, never ending.
Well, you're doing it in honor of your father, your brother-in-law, and everyone like you who has experienced the deep loss of either government failure, terrorism actions compounded by government failure, and just plain incompetence, or I don't
Yep.
even know the word to sum it up,
It's
corruption at government levels,
corruption,
whatever it is.
malfeasance. They don't
Mhm.
give a shit. Like there's, what drives me crazy is just arrogance,
Yeah.
and that people just think they're better than you. They just think they're better than us.
Yeah,
And,
and you
we
know what?
we did the Citizens United Hillary movie. Remember that went to the Supreme Court? So we did a Hillary movie. My segment is in there, and um, and I talk about that. Like, LinkedIn's aren't better than my dad. Are you kidding me? Like, who do these people think they are? And um, so we're supposed to be a classless society in that way. We're not supposed to have an upper ruling class.
That's
And
what socialism does, though. It creates a ruling class and the serfdom.
Yes, it does.
Everybody else is a serf. So
Absolutely.
you're doing an amazing job carrying the torch for those who've been lost, those close
Thank
to
you.
you. And
Thank you, guys. You too. Like, what you give voice to people like me, and without platforms like yours, we're just yelling in the freaking woods.
well, thank you for that. It's been an honor to have you on, and it's great hearing your story. And I got a feeling I could sit around with you for hours and hours and just pick your brain on
Well,
some of
let's
this
do
stuff.
it, man.
But I gotta read your book, and watch the documentary. I'd be happy to do it. Happy to do it. We'll talk offline about that. But
All right, sounds
Yeah.
good.
Really, like Dan said, this was an honor. This was a story that people might have heard here and there, but now getting a firsthand account of it is why we started the show. And stories like this is the reason we do this, because there's so many out there that people don't know about, that people need to know about, and not just the event, but all the outlining factors that go into something like this with the Clemencies and where they are now, and the safe haven in Cuba, 9/11 connections. It's just endless. And that's why we do this. And Joe, you did a absolute remarkable job explaining it in an order that everyone's going to get. And I will sum it up with this, that your dad is really proud of you.
Thank you, man. I hope so. Yeah.
Oh, that's for
Yeah.
sure. That's for sure. No,
Yeah,
you
and just if I can say one last thing, everyone's got a story. Like, you talk to people and you think you're a story, and then you was like, "Holy crap, look what that guy's been through." It's humbling. So everyone's got a story. Everyone needs to tell their story, and people just don't. And maybe that's our prerogative. But man, if we all tell our story and take a little bit to make things better based on that, man, we can change things.
they
And
say
I think
that
we're doing it, actually. I think.
that which
100%.
unites us is far greater than that which divides us. We've all had loss. We've all experienced traumas close to us, secondhand, and we've all had to deal with frustrations, and so that's part of life. And that's those things. If we don't use them to bring ourselves closer to each other and gain a deeper understanding of each other, then we're wasting those experiences, in my opinion. Yeah. Well, your dad's going to welcome you into heaven. I'm telling you right now.
Thank you,
And
man.
your family is going to be united again with no pain. So know that that's the promise of the Lord, and it's going to come true.
I'm with you. I'm there. Thank you.
Amen. So
Amen.
everyone out there, the book Shattered Lives, the movie Shattered Lives, just make sure you get it, watch it, read it, and understand what this story is all about. Joe, is an absolute honor, really, to have you on here. And this part of the show is why we do this, with saying a prayer for our law enforcement officers, saying a prayer for our military vets and our victims out there, and all their families, because everyone is affected by their work, their job, or events that happen to them. They were all in one boat, and please just keep them in your prayers. We say it all the time. You see a cop on the street, say hi, wave, say thank you, our military vets, and keep all the victims of these senseless acts in your prayers as well. Joe Connor, is an absolute honor to have you on here. Uh, my partner, Dan Murphy. This is Tom Smith for Gold Shields. Everyone, don't go anywhere. We got overtime coming up, but please, everyone out there, stay safe. We'll see you soon.
Welcome back to the OT, as promised, the overtime. Tom, cops love overtime, don't we?
They love overtime, but they love Gold Shields overtime more.
That's right. That's right. Because
Not really, but
we get a chance to. I'd like to think so. We get a chance to comment on amazing people we had the opportunity to meet, and we just met somebody who's a gem, and who is somebody who I just have enormous respect for. Joe Connor. What a great discussion.
Oh, I mean, talk about a storyteller. I mean, he just laid it out in order, how it was done emotionally, the events of it. I mean, first of all, an absolute disastrous, heartbreaking story. You know, that people, again, Dan, we say it over and over on our show, don't know about,
Right.
you know, these things. 9/11, that was the attack. No, these maniacs have been around for a long time.
There's been terror in New York City before 93, the first one that we really kind of acknowledged as a society as the big terror attack on American soil. We had a show early on in response to Chief Louis Anamone's request to us. He put a challenge to us about the bombing at the World's Fair in 1940 that killed 2 NYPD bomb squad detectives.
That's
That is
right.
still unsolved.
Yep.
That was a terrorist attack. It was done on a London pavilion
Right.
at the facility. And so there's been many things, if you look back, that have been terrorists. And this I remember I was 12 years old when Fraunces Tavern, it was big news. Big news in New York City at the time. And it's been whitewashed from history. Why? Because nobody wants to talk about the Clintons' involvement with them, Obama, Eric Holder, all these people. They don't want to bring up the FALN.
Right. And you know what? We didn't even get into it because I didn't want to distract from Joe's story with his dad. But the FALN was leaving bombs all over New York City. It wasn't just everyone, you know, just so everyone knows out there, this was not just, okay, they hit this place and we're gone. They were leaving bombs all over the place, which severely injured NYPD bomb guys, you know, when they left the bombs out in 1PP in the Kentucky Fried Chicken boxes. They did that. I mean, it was
We
endless.
worked with the Sun.
Yes, we did. Absolutely right. That's what I was getting at. Yes, we did. One of those injured detectives, Dan and I worked with his son in JTTF. And it was, you know, it wasn't just one thing. Like he said, and you had brought it up too, Dad, 130 bombings in this country by one group.
Yep.
Wow.
Insane.
Imagine that today.
Oh, yeah. Imagine if it was a right-wing group.
Well, that's how.
We'd have the FBI mobilized. We'd have the whole country breathing down their neck. But because it's ancient history doesn't mean it didn't happen and doesn't mean we still can't do something about it.
Right.
And Joe is committed. You can tell how deeply committed he is and many others to doing something about it. We have this guy who's one of the remnants of that organization from back then, living the life down in Cuba, being treated like royalty by the Cuban regime. And he should be rotting in an American jail cell.
That's right. Hopefully we can, you know, this messages just get out and circulated and more. Morales needs to be home, needs to be back here. And like you said, I am sure there's an empty room at the Supermax waiting for someone to fill.
Yeah, they got a big closet that they can retrofit if they have to, but they'll find a space for that guy. Yeah, they'll find a space for him. And I hope and I pray it happens. You know, one of the most impactful things that he said during our discussion with him is you look at people in life, you walk past them on the subway or wherever, and you don't know what they have in their life, what traumas, what losses. Everybody's got something. Now, you look at Joe Connor on the surface, he's a well-spoken professional man, and you probably wouldn't know. Until you talk to him, you don't know their stuff. So think about that as you're dealing with people in this world. We have no idea the loss, trauma, craziness that rests in their head and heart from this life. And that's the stuff that should unite us, right?
Right. And thankfully fuels him, you know, to get answers, to prepare or make sure it doesn't happen again. Get the people responsible to pay the price, you know, and starting off at 9 years old and losing your father and then continuing that, you know, focus your entire life with this is I mean, that takes a lot of energy and a lot of passion to do.
And then 26 years later, he goes to work one morning and his brother-in-law is in the tower and dies.
Right.
And he's 3 blocks away, watching it through the window. This guy has seen and experienced a lot of loss and pain, and yet he still is committed to doing the right thing for the right reasons. And so we have great respect for Joe Connor, who's now a friend.
Right.
Yeah, just an amazing discussion. I can't wait to read his books. I can't wait to watch the Shattered Lives documentary. And I hope he keeps pushing as he's pushing. He seems to be aligned with good people who are doing the same thing, pushing our government to make change.
Yep. And you know what? It's a part of our show. We've done it a lot, you know, knowing us, interviewing him, knowing the story of the bombing, knowing about his dad, but then the Clemencies pop up. you know, and that whole backstory, which most people are not going to know about. And what's more important to politicians? You know, what's more important than a vote? Nothing.
Nothing. We certainly don't matter. That's for sure.
Nothing. That's what I mean. There's nothing more important to them than their next election. Zero.
Money and power.
And that's both sides. That's everybody.
No, you're right. It's not uniquely one party. You're right.
That's everybody. And that's the sickening part of politics. You can be affiliated with the side and okay. And then, you know, even someone on your side does something, you're like, what do you like, really?
Yeah.
You know, but an absolute, I mean, honored guest. That was something to listen to. And a gentleman.
Yep. And we'll stay in touch with him, and any updates he has about the things that he's pursuing, of course, we'll let our audience know. Just want to give a quick shout out and thank our OT sponsor, as always, FALNServices.com, Fairline Security Services, Upper Midwest base, national in reach, phenomenal security, top shelf services, whether it be uniformed, plain clothes, executive protection, risk assessments, all sorts of work that they do at the highest level. FairlineServices.com should you need anything in that arena. They're great.
Amazing organization, and thankfully part of our little world here on Gold Shield, as well as Galls and Tactical Gear and Patriot Seltzer, newspapers.com, Streamlight and Carry Impact. And, you know, look how blessed we are, man. If everyone rewinds our show to the first couple, Dan and I just basically said hi to each other.
Yeah.
Hey, everybody.
How's it going? How's this mic work?
Right.
We would spend an hour trying to make sure we had the mics working right. Yeah. Now we've gotten to the point where we have sponsors and we have amazing guests. And you're right. The word is blessed. We are blessed.
Absolutely right. So thank everyone for putting us in this position. And always a big thanks from me and Dan to all of you, because
absolutely, this
is nothing without you. So continue to support us and watch us and listen and all that good stuff. We thank you very, very much. So Dan, another mind-blowing great episode, and we thankfully just keep coming up with them. But
yep, it's all the guests, and we're lucky to keep meeting them. And for some reason, they seem to want to be on our little show, and we're very happy to have them. So we thank you all.
We'll
see you soon.
Yes,
and stay safe, everybody. That's our motto.
Absolutely. Stay safe. See everybody soon. Be careful out there.